Hey everyone, or anyone, whoever is out there. Pardon my hair. It's always like this when I get out of the shower. I've been giving some thoughts about to Jesus' final week. We had the Palm Sunday celebration, such as we could do it the the other day, and just a reminder of, as I tried to stress in the sermon, just a reminder of Jesus making his final offer to Israel as a nation, meaning addressing in large measure the Jewish leadership, who, of course, was in charge of the country, at least as far as the Jewish side of it was concerned. They, of course, had to contend with the occupation of the Romans. But nonetheless, Jesus came to make an appeal to Israel, demonstrate that he was indeed their promised Messiah. He was the one that was to come. And as we saw in the sermon the other day, I had a passage from Luke 19, where Jesus it's on the his ride into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday upon the colt, and the people are cheering. His disciples are cheering him, but he's weeping. As he drew near, he saw the city and wept over it. Verse 41 of Luke 19 says, saying, if you had known, even you, especially in this your day. It was their day, the day, Israel's day, to acknowledge their Messiah. And I got to wave at Bob here. I guess that's what I did. I can't tell. Anyway, their Messiah was coming, all right? And it was there, and it was their day. If you'd only known, even you, especially in this your day, the things that make for your peace. We're commanded in Scripture to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. What does that mean? It means to pray for the Prince of Peace to come. That's what it's talking about, or what it infers anyway. The only way there will be peace is when the Messiah reigns in Jerusalem. And he was there to offer that very day. There's a whole prophecy, maybe I'll unfold it in another live chat sometime, about the prediction, the prophecy of this particular day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem. It was prophesied the very day. The date was prophesied in the Old Testament in Daniel chapter 9. But at any rate, so when he says in this your day, that's what he's talking about. This is the day. And basically, you should know. You should have known this. It was prophesied. If you'd have been reading the Scriptures and understanding the prophets, you would have known that this was all happening. He says, but the days are going to come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you. This is the Romans, who would come in 70 A.D. and destroy the temple, and they would destroy the city, basically, and lay siege to it. Many would die. Many thousands upon thousands of Jews died in that sad event. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surround you, and close you in on every side. That's a description of a siege, right? And they'll level you. And he's talking to the city now. Will level you and your children within you to the ground. And the children there would be the Jewish people. Okay, that's Jerusalem's children, you see. And level you to the ground. And they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation. You weren't aware that the Messiah had come, that your promised, prophesied Messiah, the one you've been looking for, had come. A lot of times, the problem was, in those days, the expectations of what the Messiah would look like and what he would be like. And Jesus was not meeting their expectations. The problem, of course, is not with Jesus or with the Messiah. It's with the expectations that they had. And I think there's a word of caution in there for us to make sure that our expectations are lining up with what the Bible tells us and not what we think it's going to be like, or what we think God is going to do, or what we expect God to do. This virus could be used as an example. I don't want to belabor the point on that, but is this a time for great revival? I certainly hope so. I hope people find Christ. But what if it isn't? What if it's not that? What if that's my expectation and it doesn't become that? What if it just makes things go even worse against the cause of Christ and the purpose of Christ, against his true church and the remnant that's here and all of that? What if it goes a different direction? Will I be disappointed? Well, God, you said you were going to, and maybe it would be God saying, I never did really say that. Okay, your expectations were not what they were meant to be. But that's sort of a side issue. Back to this thing with Jesus in this last week, as he heads into this. Back in Matthew chapter 23, this is sometime after the triumphal entry that Matthew records in I think 21, if I look back right. I think that's the chapter where that would be. Yeah, pretty sure it's 21. At any rate, in chapter 23 is where he begins to speak against the Pharisees. And, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. See, there's that reference to the kingdom of heaven. You're preventing the Messiah from taking the kingdom, is what he's saying. For you neither go in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. You're not going into the kingdom. You're not accepting me. You're not acknowledging me. And you're trying to keep other people from doing the same, you see. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. You travel land and sea to win one proselyte, and when he's won, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Jesus is not holding back here. Okay, this is Jesus in a judgment mood and a proclamation. Woe is a word of judgment. Okay, it's W-O-E. If it's a horse, it's W-H-O-A. Whoa, But woe is a heavy judgment that is coming upon the people, upon the Pharisees here. And again, in this chapter, as you get towards the end of chapter 23, you have a proclamation or a statement by Jesus so similar to what he said, as we just saw back in Luke chapter 19, when he wept over the city of Jerusalem. In verse 37 of Matthew 23, these are the final verses here of chapter 23, by the way. All right, that I'm going to read to you. The last verses at the end of Matthew 23. And he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her." God is sending a word, and you are doing everything you can to stamp out his word. You're stoning these people, and you're killing them. And Jesus says to the city, how often I wanted to gather your children. Again, the Jewish people, right? The children of Jerusalem. I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But you were not willing. You weren't willing to cooperate with this. How often I long. He's speaking as God to the children of Israel, his people. How often I wanted to do this, but you were never willing. You never wanted to. And then he says in this proclamation, behold, or see, your house is left to you desolate. Those are words of judgment, desolation. Your house is left to you desolate, for I say to you, you shall see me no more until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. That is the messianic proclamation that was made when Jesus entered Jerusalem. The people, his disciples, his followers, acknowledging him as Messiah by saying, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. But now Jesus is telling the Jewish leadership in verse 39 here, the last verse of that chapter. You will see me no more until you say, you Pharisees, you leaders of Israel, until the leadership of Israel says, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Till you acknowledge me as Messiah. That's what Jesus is telling them. This whole week is so filled with Jewish overtones, and it just is completely saturated in Judaism and God's relationship with the Jews and their rejection of him. It's what the week is about. It's how he ends up on the cross, ultimately. So he says, you'll see me no more until you say that I am the Messiah. Then you get to chapter 24. You thought I was done. You get to chapter 24, and it says, then Jesus went out, and he departed from the temple. Okay. In the Old Testament, there is an account of Ichabod. Nobody names their child Ichabod. Why? Because Ichabod means the glory has departed. And there's a whole account of the glory of God progressively leaving the temple. God is leaving the temple. His glory is going with him. And Israel is being abandoned, okay, as God leaves. And I swear that that's what Matthew has in mind when he writes what we call verse 1 of chapter 24. There were no chapters and verses here. It goes right from his proclamation. You're not going to see me again until you acknowledge me as Messiah. And then he departs from the temple. He goes out and leaves the temple. The glory has departed the temple. This is Ichabod. This is God leaving his people. Very profound. Very profound. And then his disciples come up to him to show him the buildings of the temple. Look at how great the temple is. Herod had been building this temple for, I don't know, something like 30 years or something up to this point. It was still under construction. And it was a beautiful building, you know. What does Jesus say in verse 2 of Matthew 24? Jesus said to them, do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. And he's talking about the time when the Romans will come and they will sack Jerusalem, lay siege to it, and destroy the temple. Everything will be laid level. Just like he said in Luke 19, repeats the same kind of language here. Not one stone is going to be left on another that shall not be thrown down. And that's exactly what happened to the temple. The ruins over there show it to this day. Huge stones that were part of the temple are laying on the ground. They don't just fall out by themselves. Look at the pyramids. Look at the Mayan temples, the Aztec temples that are still standing, great stones. This one should have remained as well. The Romans tore it down. My understanding is that a fire took place in the temple, melted the gold that was in the temple, and then, well, I have to take this call, so I'll have to close off for now. But we'll get back to this at some time, okay?